Texas geology experts say human behavior is causing more frequent earthquakes in parts of the state not known as natural seismic zones.
Deep beneath the dusty plains and oil rigs of West Texas, something ancient and unexpected has awakened. A mysterious seismic zone, long hidden beneath layers of sediment and rock, has begun to stir with subtle but unmistakable energy. Earthquakes, once a rarity in this part of the Lone Star State, have become disturbingly frequent. Even more alarming, vast sinkholes have begun to appear, yawning voids that swallow earth, asphalt, and steel without warning. The land is moving, and no one is entirely certain why. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. The region in question is part of the Permian Basin, one of the richest oil-producing zones in the United States. For decades, it has served as a hub of energy extraction, its subterranean wealth tapped through a labyrinth of wells, fracking operations, and drilling platforms. But something below has shifted in recent years. Geologists, poring over seismic data collected from an increasingly sensitive network of sensors, have identified an entirely new seismic zone, a fault system previously unknown and undocumented. What's more, this seismic activity does not conform to the known behavior of natural tectonic movement. It is erratic, shallow, and unpredictable. Beneath the surface, where the rock formations bear scars from millions of years of tectonic evolution, pressure is building in ways never before measured in West Texas. Small to moderate earthquakes, ranging in magnitude from 2.5 to 4.5, have become frequent occurrences, some of them occurring mere hours apart. These aren't just distant rumbles felt only by machines. Residents of Pecos, Odessa, and Midland have reported their homes shaking, windows rattling, and even structural cracks forming along walls and ceilings. The land, it seems, is no longer stable. At the same time, enormous sinkholes have opened up across the region. These aren't slow-developing depressions, but sudden collapses, chasm-like voids that can measure hundreds of feet across and dozens of feet deep. In some cases, they appear overnight, leaving behind scars in the earth that seem to defy logic. Vehicles, oil rigs, and even small buildings have vanished into these craters without so much as a hint of warning. Roads have buckled, pipelines have ruptured, and entire swaths of land have become unusable. What's driving this bizarre transformation of the landscape? Scientists point to a convergence of factors that may be feeding this geological unrest. Extensive oil and gas extraction has long been suspected of contributing to subsurface instability, particularly when it comes to hydraulic fracturing or fracking. This process involves injecting high-pressure fluids into underground rock formations to release trapped hydrocarbons. While effective for energy production, it also disturbs the geological structure, creating fissures and altering pressure balances. Add to that the practice of deep wastewater injection, disposing of used fracking fluids and other byproducts into deep wells, and the conditions become even more volatile. Yet what makes this newly discovered seismic zone so baffling is that it appears to be reactivating fault lines that had been dormant for millions of years. These ancient scars, buried beneath the sedimentary blanket of the Permian Basin, are now coming to life, triggered perhaps by subtle shifts in pressure or the cumulative effects of human activity. The geological record in West Texas suggests a quiet, tectonically stable past. But the present tells a different story. This region, once considered geologically dormant, is now behaving like a seismic hotbed. The implications stretch beyond the physical geography of West Texas. Infrastructure built on the assumption of stable ground is suddenly under threat. Highways, bridges, oil pipelines, and even residential developments are all vulnerable to the unpredictable movements below. Unlike regions in California or Japan, where earthquake-resistant design is standard, much of West Texas was never engineered with seismic activity in mind. Structures that once seemed solid are now compromised, vulnerable to the creeping instability of the earth beneath. Environmental scientists are also raising red flags about the potential consequences for the ecosystem. Sinkholes can disrupt groundwater flow, contaminate aquifers, and alter the delicate balance of soil chemistry. As land collapses and fractures, it also releases trapped gases and fluids from deep underground, some of them toxic or radioactive. These emissions can pose serious risks to both wildlife and human health, especially in rural communities that rely on well water or local reservoirs. From a broader scientific perspective, the discovery of this seismic zone is a revelation. It challenges existing models of tectonic behavior in the continental interior and raises questions about the long-term consequences of resource extraction. If previously dormant fault systems can be reactivated by industrial processes, then regions once thought to be safe from seismic hazards may not be as secure as assumed. Geologists and seismologists are now re-evaluating the entire framework of seismic risk assessment in similar sedimentary basins across the globe. Moreover, the very process of mapping this seismic zone has become a race against time. With every new tremor and each collapsing sinkhole, researchers are scrambling to gather real-time data. Seismic sensors, satellite imaging, and ground-penetrating radar are being deployed in increasing numbers to track the evolution of subsurface changes. Advanced modeling software is being used to simulate fault behavior and predict future events. But despite the cutting-edge tools, the pace of change is relentless, and the complexity of the subsurface geology defies easy answers. The social and economic ramifications are just as profound. West Texas has long been a cornerstone of the American energy sector, its economy tightly woven into the fabric of oil and gas production. But as the ground itself becomes unreliable, the sustainability of these operations comes under scrutiny. Drilling rigs must now navigate not just financial volatility, but literal instability. Companies face mounting insurance costs, stricter safety regulations, and the looming specter of environmental liability. Meanwhile, local communities are forced to weigh the benefits of economic prosperity against the risks of geological disaster. For the people who live and work in the region, the transformation of the landscape is both bewildering and frightening. Longtime residents speak of familiar landmarks vanishing, of fields once used for farming or grazing now marked with warning signs and fencing. The sight of machinery being swallowed by the earth leaves a haunting impression. Children are taught evacuation drills for earthquakes, something unheard of in generations past. Trust in the ground beneath their feet, a trust that formed the basis for generations of settlement and development, is beginning to erode. There is also a growing awareness of the deeper temporal scale at play. The faults now awakening in West Texas are not new. They are remnants of ancient geologic events, continental collisions, rifting episodes, and oceanic regressions that reshaped North America over hundreds of millions of years. That these dormant structures can suddenly come back to life is a humbling reminder of how little control humans have over the deep earth. Even our most advanced technologies may not be enough to fully grasp or mitigate the consequences of disturbing these long, quiet systems. This awakening of the Earth also underscores the interconnectedness of human activity and natural systems. For decades, the focus of energy development was largely on surface economics, how to extract the most oil and gas at the lowest cost. But now, with the ground itself responding in unforeseen ways, that calculation is changing. The invisible costs, those buried beneath the earth and only now emerging, are beginning to demand attention. Geopolitics, environmental ethics, and resource management all converge in this singular moment of geologic reckoning. What makes the situation even more compelling is that it is unfolding in real time, with new data being collected almost daily. Every tremor, every new sinkhole becomes a piece of a growing puzzle. Patterns are starting to emerge. Clusters of seismicity that suggest active faulting, pressure waves that ripple through subsurface strata, voids opening in regions once considered solid. The Earth is speaking, and scientists are racing to interpret its language. Some researchers believe that the current activity may only be the beginning. If pressure continues to build and the fault system continues to awaken, more powerful earthquakes could follow. The danger is not just in isolated tremors or collapsing ground, but in the potential for a cascading failure, where one event triggers another and the cumulative effect overwhelms the region's ability to respond. Such scenarios are rare, but not unprecedented. In other parts of the world, similar sequences have led to widespread devastation. What separates the West Texas case is how little precedent there is for such events in this particular location. Unlike traditional earthquake zones like the Pacific Rim, this region lacks a cultural memory of seismic disaster. That lack of preparedness could compound the impact of any future escalation. Emergency services, building codes, and public awareness campaigns are only just beginning to catch up to the new reality. The learning curve is steep, and time may be short. The psychological impact is also not to be underestimated. When the ground itself becomes unreliable, a deep-seated sense of security is shattered. People begin to question not just the safety of their homes, but the viability of their way of life. Livelihoods tied to farming, ranching, or energy extraction are suddenly at risk. Communities are forced into difficult conversations about relocation, adaptation, and resilience. The very identity of the region, built on the assumption of a stable, productive land, is being redefined. For the scientific community, the seismic awakening in West Texas is a call to action. It demands new research, revised models, and interdisciplinary collaboration. Geologists must work alongside engineers, urban planners, and policymakers to develop strategies for monitoring, mitigation, and response. The data being collected here could inform seismic risk management far beyond Texas, offering lessons for regions facing similar underground pressures and potential fault reactivation. What's happening beneath the plains of West Texas may be one of the most important geophysical developments of our time. It combines natural mystery with the consequences of human ambition, revealing the fragile balance between extraction and stability. The land is no longer silent, no longer passive. It is shifting, speaking, reacting, and what it reveals could reshape our understanding of the Earth's hidden mechanics. As the sinkholes widen and the tremors grow more frequent, the urgency of understanding this seismic zone intensifies. The awakening is not just a geological phenomenon, it is a narrative of change, uncertainty, and discovery. West Texas stands at a crossroads where the past and future collide beneath the surface, and where the ground tells a story millions of years in the making, one that is only now beginning to unfold. The seismic awakening in West Texas has done more than just shake the land. It has forced open a window into the planet's deeper, often ignored mechanics. As more data is gathered from the depths of the Earth, it becomes increasingly evident that the region is undergoing a transformation that is as scientific as it is philosophical. The recognition that the Earth is not as static as once assumed has altered the narrative surrounding resource extraction, geological risk, and even our place within these vast dynamic systems. As the seismic network expands and researchers analyze the pulses of energy resonating from beneath, they are beginning to notice something intriguing. The seismicity in West Texas does not conform to a simple pattern. Instead of radiating outward from a single point of stress, like a ruptured fault or a known tectonic boundary, the quakes are popping up across a diffuse swath of land. They cluster briefly, migrate miles away, and then flare up again with little warning. This erratic behavior suggests a much more complex and fractured subsurface than previously mapped. Rather than one cohesive fault line, the new seismic zone appears to be a tangled web of fractures, shear zones, and weak layers that respond differently to stress. In some places, the Earth yields gently, producing a low-magnitude rumble. In others, it resists until the pressure becomes too great, releasing energy violently enough to cause structural damage. The varied responses indicate not just different types of rock or pressure gradients, but possibly the existence of unknown fault segments, ghost lines etched into the Earth's memory, only now becoming active. The appearance of these fragmented fault systems is particularly concerning because it complicates efforts to predict future seismic activity. In established earthquake zones, scientists rely on fault maps, recurrence intervals, and stress modeling to estimate the likelihood of future quakes. But in West Texas, there is no long-term seismic record to draw from. This forces researchers to build their understanding almost from scratch, relying on short-term observations and real-time analytics, which leaves significant gaps in predictive capability. The implications for civil infrastructure are staggering. Engineers are now confronting the possibility that buildings and transport corridors built under the assumption of geological stability might be situated atop unknown faults. This has prompted urgent surveys of key structures, including bridges, refineries, and water reservoirs, which may not be designed to withstand even moderate seismic shaking. The standard protocols for structural assessments in Texas, historically geared more toward extreme weather events like hurricanes or droughts, now require seismic resilience evaluations previously deemed unnecessary. In addition to threats to physical structures, the unfolding seismic events carry potential consequences for regional hydrology. Subsurface movement, particularly when it leads to the formation of sinkholes, can sever or redirect underground water channels. This could cause aquifers to lose volume, become contaminated or shift away from areas that depend on them for agriculture and drinking water. The hydrological systems of West Texas are already under pressure from prolonged drought and overuse. Introducing seismic instability into this equation could further compromise an already fragile water balance, raising the stakes for both rural and urban populations. Adding to the urgency is the ongoing expansion of drilling activity. Even as tremors increase and sinkholes multiply, new permits for extraction are being approved and fresh wells are being drilled into the earth. This juxtaposition, a region in geologic flux continuing to push deeper for resources, illustrates a disconnect between short-term economic goals and the emerging long-term risks. There is a growing concern among scientists and public officials that continuing operations without a thorough reevaluation of geological risk could trigger a threshold event, a point of no return where the subsurface damage becomes self-reinforcing, escalating instability beyond manageable limits. These fears are not merely speculative. Case studies from other parts of the world, such as Groningen in the Netherlands or Oklahoma's surge in induced seismicity, show how sustained industrial activity can radically alter subsurface conditions. In those areas, quakes were eventually traced back to decades of resource extraction and reinjection, resulting in widespread property damage and billions in remediation costs. West Texas now finds itself on a similar path, though with a less developed monitoring infrastructure and far less public awareness of the risks. As scientists try to make sense of the signals, their focus is increasingly drawn to the feedback loops at play. Extraction disturbs the underground equilibrium, potentially triggering a quake. That quake, in turn, may create new pathways or voids, changing the pressure distribution. This shift can then feed back into extraction operations, destabilizing nearby wells or altering flow patterns. Over time, this chain of interactions forms a complex system, one that cannot be controlled simply by stopping activity in one location or sealing off a well. The system, once initiated, behaves like a network of dominoes, each piece capable of influencing the next across miles of terrain. Monitoring efforts have accelerated, with mobile seismic stations, fiber optic sensors, and drone-assisted ground surveys being deployed to map the region in increasingly fine detail. These tools are producing high-resolution data that reveal the subsurface in a way never before possible. Yet, paradoxically, the clarity of this new information is also revealing just how little we truly understand. For every new fault line discovered or tremor mapped, another layer of complexity is added to the puzzle. The Earth is not a static structure, but a living system, dynamic, sensitive, and reactive. This seismic revelation has also drawn the attention of other disciplines. Urban planners are revisiting zoning laws and setback requirements. Insurance firms are recalculating risk models, which were once based largely on wind and flood, but must now account for earth movement. Emergency managers are developing new training protocols, not only for first responders, but for the general public, many of whom have never experienced an earthquake and may not know how to respond when the ground begins to shake. Geophysicists are particularly intrigued by the possibility that the West Texas zone could serve as a laboratory for understanding fault reactivation. Because this region was not previously known for seismicity, any activity observed now can be traced directly to recent changes in stress, pressure, and human interaction. This allows researchers to test hypotheses in near real time, examining how faults awaken, how pressure migrates through rock layers, and how subsurface fluid dynamics contribute to instability. The insights gained here could influence seismic risk management practices far beyond Texas, potentially informing policy in other extraction-heavy regions from North Dakota to the North Sea. At a deeper level, the awakening of this seismic zone brings into focus the tension between exploitation and stewardship. For decades, the logic of extraction operated on a belief in abundance and control, that the Earth would yield its resources predictably and passively. Now that assumption is being overturned. The ground is reacting not just with subtle shifts, but with force and unpredictability. The line between exploitation and consequence is growing thinner, and the voices calling for a reassessment of land use priorities are growing louder. The transformation underway in West Texas also intersects with broader conversations about environmental justice. Many of the communities most affected by the seismic shifts are rural, lower-income areas that have historically lacked the political clout to influence state or federal policy. As sinkholes encroach on farmland and earthquakes disrupt daily life, residents are demanding more oversight, more transparency, and more accountability from the industries that operate around them. Their concerns are not merely about inconvenience, but about the long-term habitability of the land they call home. This human element, the lived experience of seismic disruption, is perhaps the most urgent and least predictable variable in the unfolding crisis. Community responses vary widely. Some residents double down, reinforcing buildings and installing emergency kits. Others talk of leaving, of abandoning land their families have lived on for generations. Still others are caught in limbo, waiting for answers from scientists or actions from government that may not come in time. Their stories, fragmented and evolving, form the emotional core of a landscape in upheaval. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on the seismic zone? Will West Texas collapse soon? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.